In this section, we're going to look at long tail search. Long tail search is a search that is very, very specific, i.e. uses very specific search terms. And people are much more likely to use long tail search when they're ready to buy something. So keyword long tail search is explained in the form of a simple graph with search volume on the y-axis and conversion rate on the x-axis. And if we plot one against the other, we get this type of curve. And at the head of the curve, the keywords that appear here have large search volumes, so they're quite popular, but they're also very high in competitiveness. And they're usually only 2 or 3 words in terms of a search term or phrase. If you were to run a Google AdWords campaign, you would spend a lot of money on these sort of words. They are expensive relative to the other words that we look at in the long tail. It's also quite difficult to rank well in Google for these search terms. And worst of all, the conversion is quite low relative to the other terms on these particular terms that appear in the head of the curve. But in the tail of the curve, we have search terms that are less popular and therefore not as competitive, usually 4 or more words, where people search using natural language, for example, how to use a DSLR camera. And it's a lot easier in fact, to rank well with these search terms. And what's really positive is that the conversion rate for these long tail search terms is high. So if we take a real life example, a search term that might appear in the head of the tail is digital camera. And as we move down towards the long tail, so in the middle region, somebody might put in, for example, something a little bit more specific than digital camera. They may put in the actual brand. So in this example, they've put in Sony digital camera. And in the long tail then, they put in something really specific, for example, Sony digital camera with 3x optical zoom. So they really have decided, if you like, that this is the camera for them and they're looking to buy it, and they're putting in a really, really specific search, or they may be looking for more information about it, but they're pretty much decided on the camera that they want to buy, and they're being really specific. And if they find, or when they find a website with that's in the top 3 in Google for this search term, they're quite likely to click on it and indeed convert to a sale. So the key takeaway here is that it can be quite difficult to be found in Google for these popular search terms. And the sum of the long tail searches can be greater than the number of searches for a very popular search term. So if you're worried about not being found for those terms at the head of the tail, focus then on terms that are more long tail and use those regularly, and you'll see great results.